Today, we're going to discuss the one thing that the new Islanders general manager, regardless of who it is, absolutely must do to improve this team. We'll talk about that and a lot more on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Monday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. I'm Gil Martin. I've been covering the New York Islanders for almost 2 decades, and I wrote the book Ice Wars on the history of the Islanders' rivalry with the Rangers, going from 1972 all the way to the modern era. So glad everyone could join us today to talk a little Islanders hockey. Hope everyone had a very happy Mother's Day. And so much to get to on today's show. We're going to talk about one important thing that must change, whoever the Islanders hire as their new GM. We'll talk a little bit about some things the team is planning, or at least claiming to be putting into implement to make things more fan-friendly. And we'll continue our player-by-player analysis of the Islanders with defenseman Ryan Pulock. So lots to get to on the show, but we got to lead off with this, and it is absolutely critical. Look, everydayers know one of the things we've talked about repeatedly on this show for more than a year as of right now is that this team needs to get younger, faster, and more skilled. That I should really sell t-shirts, okay? That has been a mantra of the Locked On Islanders podcast. And I stand by that as a goal that the new GM has to try to implement. But this is the one thing that absolutely, whoever the Islanders hire, and it was a fairly quiet weekend on the news front as far as who the next general manager is going to be. But whoever they hire, there is one thing that absolutely must change. Lou Lamoriello, and all due respect to him, because like I said, he's in the Hall of Fame for a reason. He won all those Stanley Cups in New Jersey. You got to give him his props for what he did accomplish. And he helped the Islanders go to back-to-back conference finals in 2020 and 2021. But here's the thing. Lou Lamoriello did not do a great job of managing the cap. And not just managing the cap as a general statement, but he really handed out bad contracts and combined them with way too many modified no trade clauses and full no movement clauses. Why is that a problem? In the salary cap era, it's all about value, okay? You're going to pay a Matthew Barzal first line forward salary. He has to then produce like a first line forward or very close to it, or that contract is a bad value. If you're giving Anders Lee a $7 million a year contract, he has to produce at or close to, or maybe even, dare we say, better than a $7 million a year player. And the problem is that Lou, during his tenure here, gave out a lot of bad contracts and combined that with no trade clauses and modified no trade clauses where, the player could put a list of 15 or 16 teams that he absolutely refuses to be traded to. When you combine those two things together, you can't fix mistakes. And we saw too often, look, COVID happened, the cap went down. That was a shock to everybody, okay? All 32 teams in the NHL had to deal with the problem of the shrinking cap after COVID when there were no fans in the stands, and it was a shock. But the teams that weren't stuck in bad contracts with no movement clauses did a much better job of that adjustment because they had flexibility. So Lou gave out 7-year extensions to bottom 6 forwards like Pierre Engvall, as an example, to third pair defensemen, Scott Mayfield, as an example, and then gave those players either no trade clauses or modified no trade clauses. And if you go up and down the Islanders roster right now, your backup goalie, now age 37, no trade clause. Anders Lee, your captain, mid 30s right now, no trade clause. Brock Nelson, Kyle Palmieri had at least limited, if not full, depending on when you ask the question, no trade clause. J.G. Pageau, Ryan Pulock, Adam Pelech, Matthew Barzal. The list just, Pierre Engvall, Anthony Duclair. The list just keeps going. Scott Mayfield. It is too extensive. And when you have all those no trade clauses plus questionable contracts, you can't correct your mistakes. And that's when you have to trade a Nick Leddy, or you end up, losing a Jordan Eberle, or you have to make a deal. You end up trading Devon Taves, who goes on to play at a very, very high level in Colorado after the Islanders were forced to deal him for cap reasons. So a lot of the reasons that the Islanders fell from that high level of back-to-back conference final appearances is the lack of flexibility under the cap, the bad contracts that Lou gave out, coupled with the no trade clauses and the no movement clauses that made it almost impossible to fix those mistakes. Clearly, at the beginning of this season, the Islanders wanted to possibly move on from Pierre Engvall. Patrick Waugh basically had no room for him on the roster after training camp. And part of that is, again, cap problems that this team had. The beginning of the season, they couldn't even field a full 23-man roster because of cap issues. It all comes full circle. So you need to get younger, and believe me, younger players, especially when they're on their entry-level contracts, they're cheaper and they're under team control. You have the original 3-year deal when they sign as a rookie, and then you have a couple of years before they're arbitration eligible, and then you have a couple of years where they are arbitration eligible before they can go to free agency. And the Islanders need to have more young, talented players who are making less money in order to then complement those players with older, talented, top-line veterans. And when you have that mix of younger guys in their prime, and older guys, that is the ideal way to construct a roster. Lou didn't do that. He had almost only 1 or 2 really talented younger guys. I mean, it's really Dobson, Romanov, and Holmstrom are really the 2 or 3 that come to mind. Maybe you add Max Siplikov to that mix now, but overall, this team was top heavy. There were too many players with bad contracts. You don't go signing. You shouldn't have more than 3 or 4 no movement clauses on your roster at any given time, unless you have like what the Maple Leafs have, where you have 4 outstanding players in, Marner and Tavares, and you've got those 4 guys, and you want all of them to have the no trade clause. But no trade clauses should be for your most important 4, maybe 5 players. And other than that, you don't give them out so easily, because you need to be able to fix your mistakes. So hopefully, whoever the new GM is, they make this team younger, faster, and more skilled. But they also don't give out no trade clauses like candy bars at Halloween to everybody who comes in asking for a new contract. And hopefully you don't hand out too many 7-year deals to players who are, I'm not going to say replaceable, because some of these players are good players and important players, but you don't give out 7-year contracts to guys on the wrong side of 30 who are not major, not your top 6 forwards, not your top 4 defensemen. Those guys you want on a cheaper contract so you can move them in and out of the lineup and save your money to bring in the big guns, your elite scorer. You want to sign a Mitch Marner? You better have 2 or 3 or 4 guys earning somewhere near the league minimum in order to have enough cap space to pull that off. And just the way this team was constructed, as they got older, the players slowed down. He couldn't move them, and it created a lot of problems for the Islanders. So the new GM has to have a very different approach about the way that he or she handles contracts and no trade clauses, or else we're going to do the same thing all over again. And that aspect of it absolutely must change for the Islanders to get better. All right. We've got a lot more to get to. The Islanders basically telling season ticket holders some changes are coming to help get fans more access to the team. We'll talk about Ryan Pulock's season and year look ahead. And for our Islanders' birthday of the day, a Slovakian goalie who was with the team in the mid-2000 teens. All that coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track, but that's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. Now I budget smarter and save more. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you could use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. So before we get to the Islanders news about fan access, and it's, I think, at least a step in the right direction. But a little bit of player news. Jakub Skarek, backup goalie, well, third or fourth goalie in the system. I guess the fourth goalie in the system, but previously one of the top goalies at Bridgeport. He did play a couple of games with the Islanders NHL edition this year. He's no longer going to be part of the organization. He has signed a contract to play in Finland next year. So we wish Jakub Skarek all the best in the next step of his career. But look, clearly his failure to develop into what the Islanders hoped he would be, again, it gets back to the issue of Bridgeport just not developing players very well. And, Skarek was a third-round draft pick back in 2018. He's now 25 years old. He played a grand total of 2 games in the NHL, started only 1, and, he never took that next step to become a bona fide NHL prospect. And I wish him the best. Certainly playing in front of some really struggling teams in Bridgeport didn't help, but that whole thing is another big responsibility that the new GM and or president of hockey operations is going to have to fix for this team. Now, John Ledecky, the co-owner of the Islanders, sent an email out over the last week outlining some changes that they're trying to implement here for season ticket holders. And the basic theme was increased access to the team and players. And season ticket holders and fans in general have had legitimate complaints about the way the Islanders, and in particular Lou Lamoriello, have handled some of these things. So ownership, management, however you want to call it. So Ledecky outlined the following things that he said were going to be implemented, and hopefully they will. Number 1, a fan fest over the summer. That'll be a barbecue with the players. A state of hockey forum with Islanders management. Access to some open practices, some morning skates, some days of training camp. That is absolutely a good thing. Alumni meets and greets. That is something that this team definitely should be implementing as often as possible. The heritage of this organization, the dynasty years, and let's face it, even players who played for the Islanders in the 90s and in the 2000s and, the recent, guys like Josh Bailey or Matt Martin or Cal Clutterbuck, certainly fans would be happy to have a meet and greet with them, not just the dynasty guys. Photo opportunities in the locker room has been discussed. Open skates at UBS Arena and paint the ice. They did that up in Bridgeport. There was a little embarrassing thing that was painted on the ice by some fans. But again, you kind of do that kind of a thing and it gets the fans involved. It makes them feel a part of the organization. And you want your season ticket holders to feel like they're gaining something special. Members only viewing parties, definitely something that is a positive. And then here are 3 other things that I think are important that the team is trying to address. $10 Emerald parking per game. It sure as heck beats the $40 or $50 that fans are being charged nowadays. I don't know whether non-season ticket holders will have another increase this year in the cost of parking, but $10, yeah, it's still a bit of a schlep from the Emerald parking lot to the arena, whether you walk, whether you take the shuttle bus. It's not like the Coliseum where you parked and you walked a few hundred feet and then voila, you were at the arena. But at least instead of paying $40, $50 for parking, you're paying $10. That's at least a step in the right direction. Food and beverage credits to use on game days. The food selection at UBS Arena has been great, but the prices of the food is, like all sporting events pretty much, very, very high. So hopefully that will help season ticket holders in that regard. And then a brand new interactive Islanders rewards program. Again, we don't know the specifics yet, what it'll entail, what the fans can gain. Maybe you get deals at the Islanders official team store. Maybe you get more food and beverage discounts. Maybe you get an extra ticket to certain games. Whatever, autograph memorabilia, whatever it is that you can gain through that program, it keeps fans involved. It gives them an incentive. It makes them feel like they are benefiting by buying season tickets. And that is something that this organization has kind of lacked over the course of the last few seasons, where season ticket holders very often felt put upon. And how many games have we seen over the last year or two, especially, where the Islanders announce sellout crowd or very close to a sellout crowd, and yet there are a lot of empty seats in the arena at game time. And if you look on the secondary market, tickets are going for $10, $12 per ticket, a couple of days before the game, where the season ticket holders paid 10 times that for their seats. So hopefully this remedies it. And look, I don't know how successful this is going to be, but here is an undeniable positive, okay? The Islanders organization heard what the fans were complaining about, and they are making an attempt to address it. As of right now, before anything is put into action, that's all we can say. And hopefully the plans that the ownership group is making and will implement will succeed in addressing some of the issues that season ticket holders and fans in general have had, and make season ticket holders feel like they are getting value and something special for laying out the money that they are spending on season tickets for the Islanders. And let's face it, let's face it, the best thing ownership can do is to put a great team on the ice that makes showing up for games a pleasure and something to look forward to, and all of that. But until they're able to do that, because it probably won't happen overnight, the idea that season ticket holders can feel valued by the organization and get special perks and benefits is important regardless of how good the team plays. And I'm glad to see the Islanders organization addressing it. All right, we have got more to get to on today's show. Ryan Pulock, what was his season like? How did he do? What is his most likely role going forward with the Islanders? We'll talk about that, plus our Islanders birthday of the day, coming up next on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. So we continue our player-by-player look at the Islanders from last year. We have done 5 players so far. Everydayers, you'll recall, we talked about Mark Gatka, Matthew Barzal, Anthony Duclair, Tony DeAngelo, and Semyon Varlamov. Today, we will discuss Ryan Pulock. And Pulock played in 74 games for the Islanders this year, so he only missed 8 games. Had 5 goals and 23 points, and was a +2. Only had 16 penalty minutes this year. One of his goals came on the power play, as did one of his assists. He also had 2 shorthanded assists. Only played 21:05 per game in time on ice minutes. That was down about a minute and a half from the previous season. The hits, just about the same, although he played in 16 more games this year than he did the previous year. Only had 1 more hit, 100 versus 99 in 2023-2024. He blocked 155 shots. Again, only up 6 from the previous season, even though he played a lot more games. So it was a mixed bag. I think out of the duo of Pulock and Pelech, Ryan Pulock was the better of the two. I think that he did a solid job. You don't want to see the injuries continue to take a toll on him. He's only 30. He'll turn 31 in October. Pulock is still somebody who I think, if he stays healthy, can be an important contributor to the Islanders going forward. And, the Islanders basically need to have some solid defensive defensemen on this roster. You got Romanov, Mayfield, and Pulock and Pelech are in theory the guys who are going to fill that role. But I think Ryan Pulock would probably be the best of the bunch under the circumstances. So we'll see how it all plays out, but I expect him to be back in a top 4 role for this team. He is a right shot defenseman. That makes him extremely valuable. There's not a lot of those out there. And I think as a right shot defenseman, he can, do a good job of allowing a left shot defenseman on this roster to go out there and be a little bit more daring on the offensive side of the board. So whether it's a Mike Riley or a Scott Perunovich or, Dobson is another right shot defenseman. So it wouldn't be too common to pair the two of them together. But I think Ryan Pulock will continue to play a solid role for this team. If I had to give him a grade for this season, it would probably be somewhere in the B range. I think he was solid but not spectacular. He had a good but not great season, and I am hoping that he can stay healthy and continue to be productive for the Islanders going forward. Time now for our Islanders birthday of the day. We are one day early, but Tuesday will be the 40th birthday of former Islanders goalie Jaroslav Halak. The native of Bratislava, Slovakia, a 9th-round pick by the Canadiens back in 2003, made his NHL debut in 06-07 with the Habs, later played for the Blues and the Capitals before joining the Islanders for the 2014-2015 season, stayed on the island through 2017-2018, then played for the Bruins, the Canucks, and briefly the Rangers before hanging up his skates after the 2022-2023 season. Jaroslav Halak played in 581 career NHL games. He had a 2.50 goals against average and a .915 save percentage. And he really provided the Islanders with some solid goaltending during parts of his tenure. One of his better games as an Islander, how about January 27th, 2015, Islanders hosting the Rangers at the old barn, the Nassau Coliseum. It's Henrik Lundqvist against Jaroslav Halak in goal. And in this game, the Islanders scored the first 4 goals of the contest with Mikhail Grabowski, Matt Martin, Ryan Strome, and John Tavares each tallying. And the Islanders and Jaroslav Halak lost the shutout with 10 seconds left in the game when Halak gave up the only goal of the contest to Carl Hagelin. And in this one, the Islanders allowed 41 shots on goal, but Jaroslav Halak saved 40 of them. That's a .976 save percentage. Again, he came within 10 seconds of the shutout. Jaroslav Halak is our Islanders' birthday of the day. I want to thank you for making Locked On Islanders your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the all-new Locked On NHL Game Night. Every game, every night until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. You could find NHL Game Night on Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you have a question, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, you could email us at lockedonislanders@gmail.com. If you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever's on your mind. You can follow the show on X at Locked On Isles. You can follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYR VSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders all throughout this very important offseason. And it's always great to talk Islanders hockey with you anytime. Everydayers, we are back tomorrow. We will have the latest news on the GM search. We'll talk a little bit about the play of Noah Dobson and Bo Horvat at the World Championships. They got off to a very good start, playing again Sunday night. So we'll have the latest on that. And we'll continue our player-by-player look at the Islanders with Simon Holmstrom. So make sure you join us tomorrow. Have a great day, everybody. Stay safe. And, of course, let's go Islanders.